video, we're going to talk about the importance of bend and flexion. One of the things that you should know about bend is it's an easy way to control the horse. So if I bend the horse to the left, they will move to the right and spin around me. So this can be important when you are doing handling a horse that could be dangerous, because if you always keep them bent slightly towards you, then if they freak out, they'll freak out away from you. If the horse is counterbent, they're preparing to launch their weight into you. That being said, when you're beginning your work in hand, you generally want to do all your work on an inside primary rein. So inside and outside don't mean necessarily where the horse is in the arena. It means the bend. So if I bend him to the left, see, I have an inside primary rein. If I bend him to the right, then I'm going to have an outside primary rein. Now, just because I bend him to the right does not mean that I'm going to pull the horse into the bend. So there's 3 ways that you can ask the horse to bend. So I can ask him to bend towards me by drawing in the direction I want him to bend. So notice that when I do this, I'm not pulling him towards me. Then I'm kind of doing a touch release. So that's one way to ask for bend. I can also use the push of the outside rein to have the horse bend away from me. Once you get further along in your work in hand and your riding, then you can use a combination of your reins together, but always being in agreement. So if I bend him to his right, see how I'm pushing a little on the left rein, as I imagine like I'm closing brokerage drapes on the right rein. And now I'm going to flip the bend to the left towards me. Now, when you have a high-level horse and you're doing upper-level work, you want the bend to be higher up in the horse's neck. When you are trying to do things to supple the horse's neck, you're going to want more bend, and then you want the neck to be low. So as the neck is low, you can see that I have a bend throughout the whole neck. And this is a pretty well-trained horse, a good neck to look at, because his bend is pretty uniform when he bends. It doesn't look like any parts of his neck are wood and that they don't bend well. So when I have the head low, I'm going to get a deeper bend. And again, I can ask him to bend away from me. So then as I ask the head to come up, see how that changes the bend? So he kind of holds a lot of tension around C3. So each vertebrae of the neck, so C meaning cervical vertebrae, so each cervical vertebrae in the neck is about a fist. So C3 is right about here. And so this is where he has a hard part bending. So how do you fix problems with bend in the horse, and why is it important? So bending is important because it gets the horse to relax through the neck. What you want in an ideal horse, and again, this is a pretty good horse whose neck to look at. What you want in an ideal horse's neck is, see how he's raising his head and he's got this big fan in his neck, but he's not broken in the neck. The pole is the highest point. There you go. See, I was going to say the only thing is he could drop down into the bridle just a little more. See there, he's starting to overbend, so I'm going to ask up. But see how even when I play, that his neck looks like one big fan? The way that I got that was never through holding and compressing him. It was through suppling him and playing with the bend in different spots. So again, like even when I asked him to come up there, I could see a lot of tension here. So what you want to go into to help your horse with bend, and it'll help them with being able to have you control them, is what we call flexions. So the flexions were invented by Boucher, and if you read, I think it's his second manner where he wrote the flexions, he wrote like 13 flexions. So you can kind of categorize these flexions into 3 basic categories. So there's flexions of elevation, which is how I get it so that his head comes up so nice and easily. So I can do flexions of elevation standing from the side. So as I do these flexions of elevation, what I'm looking for is for him to raise his head, but with still being light on the bit, and start to open up these vertebrae. So I can do it standing from the side, and notice that I'm drawing forward as I'm asking him to come up. That I'm not lifting his head, and if you see the bit, I'm not creating any sort of pressure on it. So I can do a flexion of elevation from the side, or I can do a flexion of elevation from the front. Now notice as I start to do the flexion of elevation from the front, how he's starting to twist his head. And so I'm going to agree with that at first instead of biting him, and then see if I can start to try and get him more level. Now hear all this chomping that he's doing on the bit right now? What he's doing is he's trying to release his pull. And so what I want is to hear that jiggle like he just gave me there. That when he jiggles the bit versus chomps the bit, that means that he's dropping the bit and releasing through the pull. So those are going to be your flexions of elevation. What I was kind of showing you on the bending, those are going to be lateral flexions. So when you do flexions of elevation, as the head comes up, the horse becomes straighter. When I do lateral flexions, I'm going to pick the height of the head based on where I want him to flex and bend. So like I said, Boucher wrote like these 13 flexions or whatever. And one of the things he didn't do a very good job about writing is that you really need to listen and follow the horse. That it's not about memorizing these flexions and then pushing your horse into them. That you want to try to listen to them. So like he's asking me to bend, and see now he's asking to bend away from me. So I'm not going to just let him always dictate what I'm going to do. But especially when I first start out, I'm going to agree with him. And then see how I can use my arm, or I can use my whip to kind of help me flex different vertebrae. And when I get him to bend, he should, again, have a uniform bend. So if the neck looks tight anywhere, I can use my whip or my hand. I could also even use my reins around the neck to try and help me get that flexion. And so the reason that we do flexions is because you should get all possible combinations of the neck in a relaxed fashion. That's what the flexions essentially are. The reason that we do the flexions is because the head should be subject to the neck, meaning sorry, I said that backwards. The neck should be subject to the head, meaning that when I move his head around, see how his neck follows? And the reason that you want that is because all your aids, whether you're on the cavesson or you're on the bit, are going to be on the head. So if you have the head following the neck, that's going to give you better control versus the other way around. So we've got lateral flexions and flexions of elevation. The lateral flexions, when you do a lateral flexion, a lot of times people tend to do too much bending with their horse. And the reason that bending can be bad is if I overbend him, I don't want to lose the hind end. So a lot of times people like pull the horse's head towards them and they think, oh wow, look at all this bend. And then what the horse does is they go splaying out in the hind end. So when I do my lateral flexions, I shouldn't be having him move and be splaying either in the front or in the hind. As you can see, he's been standing pretty still when I've been doing it. So the last kind of category of flexions are flexions of envelopment. What flexions of envelopment are is anytime the horse feels enveloped, whether it's with your legs or with the reins, they should soften when they feel that feeling. So flexions of envelopment can be done along the neck. I can start back by the withers. So I just put my reins gently together and then I just kind of close my hand. Now see, he kind of dropped down a little too much, so I'm going to, which is what he used to tend to do. So I'm going to try to ask him up and then be soft. And then notice he jiggled a bit after I got him in a good position. So you could see at first that he kind of tried to overbend and fight with the bit, which is what those horses used to do a lot of. And so then that one was at the withers. This one is going to be in the middle of the neck. And so again, I put my reins together, and then I just softly close my hand. If he lays back behind, I'm going to ask him to come up a little till he softens. There it is. And notice he jiggled the bit again when he did it. And then the next flexion of envelopment is going to be around the horse's head. And so you're going to put the rein on the opposite side away from you, directly behind their ears. And then just, again, keep the rough part of the rein together and gently close. Done. There it is. So notice that he tucked his nose just a little bit, which is what he should do. When he feels like he's enveloped by the reins, he should soften and come into the bridle. The next flexion of envelopment, you're going to cross the reins underneath the horse's chin and envelop the chin until they jiggle the bit, just like he did there. When you're first learning, you want to have an inside primary rein. So when I bend him to the left, because I have a left primary rein, what that's going to do is help me bring the left hind under. So whichever direction the horse is bent towards is going to be the side that they're going to be engaging that hind leg more. So as your working hand gets more advanced and you start to have an outside primary rein, when you flip the bend to the away from your primary rein, like I just did here to the right, you can see how that engages his right hind as well. And see, so now I'm going to flip and I'm going to bend it to the left. I'm still engaging the left hind more. Not going to change. It bends to the right. And notice he's engaging the right rein. So the important things to think about when it comes to bend is getting a relaxed neck, how bend affects where the horse is going, and how bend affects the push of the hind legs.